In today's video, we're covering how to dive at altitude. What's up, divers, and welcome to our channel Azul Unlimited, where we teach all things scuba diving. My name is Sarah, and today I find myself at the beautiful Lake Tahoe, which sits at a little over 6,000 feet. That's about 1,800 meters for the rest of the world. So that means that we're talking about altitude diving. What designates an altitude dive? An altitude dive is any time that you're starting a dive at over 1,000 feet of altitude or around 300 meters. And the reason why we split this up as a separate type of diving is for safety reasons. What does it mean for your body when you go diving at altitude? When we're above sea level, and especially when we get high above sea level, the air is thinner. Air has less pressure and less density, which means that the partial pressure of oxygen in the air blend is lower. For those of us that are accustomed to kind of the sea level area, it's going to feel like you aren't getting enough oxygen. That means when you inhale, there are actually fewer molecules of oxygen in the air, even though it still makes up 21% of the air that you're breathing. And when there's insufficient oxygen to meet the body's demands, hypoxia results. If you guys know, hypo means less, hyper means too much. So hypoxia means not enough oxygen. Signs and symptoms of hypoxia include fatigue, shortness of breath, lightheadedness, faintness, and exhaustion. I know for me, when I first came to Tahoe and did a workout within the first few days that I was here, I was on the struggle bus. However, our body adapts. People who live at altitude resist hypoxia better because their bodies adapt over time by increasing the red blood cells that carry oxygen. So what does this mean for you in diving? You may feel the difference as you're loading gear or maybe carrying gear to the water's edge. It could also mean that you get kind of out of breath as you do your surface swim. But the nice thing about diving is that once we put in our regulator and go underwater, the partial pressure increases so we can get a relief from that feeling of shortness of breath. Now, we haven't even gotten into what this means for dive planning and nitrogen accumulation, so stick with me here. How to deal with the effects of altitude. If you have the time, just acclimate. It can take a couple of weeks to really get used to the different altitude, but if you have the time, it's going to be more comfortable if you can go diving, a week or 2 weeks after you've gotten to altitude. This, of course, is not feasible if you're just going on a short vacation, but it's one of the options. If you don't have the benefit of time, then you just need to take it easy. Take multiple trips if you need to carry equipment to the shore. Just go slow. Even though when we go underwater and the pressure increases and we get that increase of partial pressure of oxygen underwater, we want to make sure that we don't start the dive feeling overexerted. So again, just take it easy. This is the same for our ascent. If you're having a strenuous dive and you're finishing the dive by swimming really hard, you are going to struggle coming to the surface because you're coming up to thinner air. So you really need to take the time to slow down, catch your breath, as you slowly make your ascent. You should always make slow ascents. This is scuba diving. Slow ascents are good, but especially with altitude diving. If you want some help with this, you can also decide to dive with nitrox, and that's an increase in percentage of oxygen that will help with this shift in partial pressures. If you're new here, make sure you hit the subscribe button and the little bell so you don't miss any of our future videos. What specialized tools do I need to altitude dive? You're going to need theoretical dive tables or a computer that helps you with your dive plan. What training should I have? In order to understand the nuances of altitude diving, it's great to take the Altitude Diver Specialty course. In order to take that, you need to be at least 10 years old and be open water certified. You could also take the Altitude Dive Adventure Dive as part of your advanced course. All right, so how do we do this? Diving at altitude. Pressure, nitrogen, and the body. When you arrive to altitude, you're actually off-gassing nitrogen. It's almost as if you've already done a dive. So as weird as that is, if you're going to arrive and go diving, you need to treat it as if it's a repetitive dive, even though you haven't been in the water yet. The better plan is to allow yourself over 6 hours to fully off-gas and start fresh from an equilibrium point. At altitude, nitrogen can more easily come out of solution and cause DCS. Remember, each person and each body responds differently to altitude, so as with any dive planning, but especially with altitude diving, be conservative. We need to make plans that don't allow us to push that limit. Okay, that means that we're going to have shorter no-stop times. And we do this by making our dive plan using a theoretical depth. The theoretical depth that you use to plan your dive is actually going to be deeper than the actual depth that you will be diving. This means when you're planning, you're going to get a shorter bottom time that you apply to the actual depth, which is shallower. This means that you're spending less time at that shallower depth. That means it's a more conservative dive. As with any kind of diving, but especially with altitude diving, you want to make sure that you're doing any decompression stops and especially safety stops that your computer tells you to do. We always talk about a slow ascent, but especially with altitude diving, we need to go even slower. In the textbook, it says 9 meters per minute, which is half the rate that we would normally say for normal sea level diving. How to plan a dive using tables versus your dive computer. Most dive computers, and I don't know why I keep doing this, because this thing is definitely not a dive computer and it's not going to help me on an altitude dive, but most dive computers have the capability of dive planning at altitude. As with anything new with your computer, make sure you download the manual and learn how the computer works for that type of diving. You can go through the planning mode and make your dive plan just straight through the computer. Now, if you want to use the tables, tables are great. I highly recommend understanding how they work, but they are limited. You're going to get less time underwater by using dive tables. That's why computers are so great, because they eliminate the unnecessary rounding and you can get longer bottom times. That being said, using dive tables and understanding how they work is essential. So if you want to learn how to use the dive tables for altitude diving, it'll be our next video on this channel, so make sure you subscribe and hit the notification bell so you don't miss it. If you're watching this in the future, hi new friends! That video will be linked in the description below. Finally, we need to talk about temperature, specifically hypothermia. The water in the mountains it's going to be cold, right? So we need to wear a proper exposure suit. Not only will the exposure suit help us stay comfortable and ultimately have more fun, it also helps us to reduce the risk of DCS because our body is functioning efficiently. Where can you go altitude diving? There are tons of bucket list items from all over the world here. For one, right here in the US. Lake Tahoe has been so much fun for me. You can tell I'm sporting the Tahoe Dive Center t-shirt. They really helped me get oriented with the area, got me my rental gear that I needed, even took my tanks out to the dive site because I just had way too much crap in my van to be able to deal with it. They're an awesome operation, run by a great team. They have the sweetest dive shop dog. Well, the second sweetest. Abby's the sweetest. She's not about this. She's like, Mom, I was asleep. I guess technically she's not a dive shop dog, so we can let go of her title. Yeah, check them out. They're the only dive shop in Tahoe, and they do boat trips out to different wrecks. They do shore diving and courses. I can't say enough about this team. I really had a wonderful time diving with them. You can also check out places in Yellowstone National Park. There's Rock Lake in New Mexico. Even some low altitude diving. We also have the Alps. There are hundreds of lakes in the Alps spreading across 5 different countries, so there's tons of options there. Finally, one of the big gems, I'm gonna say this name wrong, but Lake Titicaca. I'm not gonna make the joke, not gonna do it. I'm not gonna do it. But we all know this is in the Andes. It's wicked high. What is it at? 3,812 meters. That's about 12,500 feet. That's a lot. That's high. Anyway, that about does it from me. Thanks for checking out this video. If you liked it, give it a big ol' thumbs up and hit the subscribe button so you don't miss any of our future videos. If you have questions about altitude diving, just hit me up in the comments below. Make sure you follow us on Instagram so you can see what's going on, because honestly, I don't even know what's going on. I need to follow us on Instagram so I can figure it out. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.